It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. It is Sunday, the glorious Sunday. It is time for some NFL football. You've got your host here. Welcome, everybody, for coming into today's episode of Locked On NFL Sunday. My boy, Cody Roark, at Cody Roark NFL on Twitter. Myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. Glad and grateful to be able to be here with you today to help preview all of the NFL action Sunday and Monday. Get you ready for the big weekend here. We got a bunch of games in the early slot and in the afternoon slot, Cody. It is shaping up to be a very fun Sunday. First of all, how are you? Welcome back. Glad that you're feeling better. Glad to have you here, man.
Hey, I'm feeling great. Great to be back here. I thought you and David did a phenomenal job last week of breaking down the action. I was able to pull it up on my TV and just watch you guys there. And we're at the point of the NFL season where it is crunch time. We are week 14. It's dwindling down every game here for some of those teams that are on the brink of the playoffs or that are in the playoff spots that are, they have to hold advantage. Every game from this point on, it becomes a little bit more crucial, and very excited to be breaking it down here today.
Absolutely. Very excited to go ahead and get this one started. We're going to be joined by a couple of our good friends from around the network. Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers and Locked On NFL is going to be with us to talk a bit about the Packers, the outlook for the rest of their season. Aaron Rodgers in the MVP race. We got a lot of questions for him. And then, of course, we'll round it out today with David Droegemeier of the Locked On Chargers podcast, one of the guys from the band over there, getting you up to date with everything you need to know about the Chargers every Monday through Friday. We're going to talk about the Chargers, what their future looks like, and he's going to make his argument for Justin Herbert as the offensive rookie of the year, even though there's another rookie in the NFL that's picking up some traction. But today, Cody, our job is to get through and make sure we talk about every single team in the NFL that's playing today. No fluff, no guest appearances, or no celebrity cameos, no weird sketches, no costumes. We're here to talk football, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Locked On NFL Sunday Live. I mean, one of the things is we break it down from every single game, every element that you're looking for. So if you're a football fan of any of the 32 teams, we have you covered here. Gotcha. Like Ross said, no fluff, no muff. We're here.
We appreciate everybody for being here as well and for tuning in with us. Don't forget, wherever it is that you're watching us from, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is that you're watching us, you can comment below, and then we'll see your comments. We'll be able to bring you up and then give you a little bit of a shout out here on the show as well. So feel free to comment and chime in at any point. Cody, let's go ahead and kick it off a little bit before we get to these early games. We'll put them up on the screen so people can see the spreads and everything like that. But let's get to some of the big news first. We're going to talk about this game a little bit later, but one of the big things that just dropped, Jalen Hurts expected to start for the rest of the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. I know he was going to start today, but I have to say the decision to start him for the rest of the season being made already is a little bit of a surprise for me.
Yeah, and I think when we look at the overall body of work from this Philadelphia Eagles offense this season, Ross, we've just seen Carson Wentz get battered, broken, beaten down, and that offensive line has struggled. I thought that Kelsey also came out too. Obviously, Travis Kelsey's brother, Jason. I thought he came out and he said, "Look, the offensive line has played terrible. Coaches haven't done a great job. Quarterback hasn't done a great job. It's on all of us to get it rectified." And I think it's a little bit of a gamble. I mean, you're throwing Jalen Hurts out there. And there's a chance. I mean, maybe they are trying to see if they have it in Jalen Hurts, but I don't think a lot of these issues, Ross, for the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be solved. You look at the offensive line, Jason Peters out now.
Right.
He was playing injured. That offensive line has been as makeshift as I've ever seen. The wide receiving talent has not been there. Fulgham has emerged, which has been great. Greg Ward Jr. has been a guy for them. But Alshon Jeffrey hasn't contributed in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know, for a rookie quarterback, do you want him to go out there and take all these hits? I mean, I think he's a little bit more sustainable for that. He's a mobile-style quarterback, but I still think it's a gamble, but I think it's great for Carson Wentz to kind of reset, right? To be on the sideline, not on the field, maybe see things a different perspective, and maybe they roll with them, competition next year. But I mean, right now it's just Philadelphia. It's weird. I mean, they're not very accustomed to losing, and losing seasons they get magnified on radio and everything else. So it's going to be a big storyline, but it's not going to be easy, Ross, because he's been going against the tough New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough matchup for him coming up this weekend. And look, it was already going to be enough. The Philadelphia Eagles, to your point, are coming in with their 12th starting offensive line order or whatever lineup is in 13 games, which is insane. And of course, they've had to change that within games as well. So they played with more offensive lineups than that. But this combination is going to be their 12th starting lineup going into the game. So this is absolutely insane for the Philadelphia Eagles and what they're having to deal with. But this decision to roll with Jalen Hurts for the rest of the season just seems a little bit premature before you've seen him on the field. And before you've seen him on the field, not only for this game, but maybe another game. Look, I'm very much in a position where I'm evaluating a potential starting quarterback over the course of several games as well with the New Orleans Saints, of course. And so, it just feels a touch premature, or at least it all happened a little bit quicker than expected. Now, one of the big question marks and one of the interesting questions that I think is going to come up all over the place that I want to entertain just for a little while is the idea of where Carson Wentz will actually be next season. If they wanted to trade him after the season, they could do it this offseason. They have to do it before the third day of free agency, before an additional $10 million gets tacked onto his contract. That helps to free up some of the dead cap and dead money space and everything in 2022. So it would be a move toward the future more than anything else. But I feel like you're right. They should bring these guys back at least next year to at least have a bit of a competition. You have a potential out in his contract before 2022 anyway.
Yeah. Well, and my dilemma too is, if Philadelphia wants to offset that contract, it's going to hurt them more so than it is going to hurt a team that's acquiring to trade him. And so you really have to weigh the pros and cons. If you're going to offset a guy like Carson Wentz, you have to embrace the fact that you're going to be entering a rebuild, because if you're trying to offset the money cost to be able to at least field a more competitive football team in an NFC East division, which I feel like next season will be a lot stronger than it is right now, especially if you get, a guy like Saquon Barkley back for the Giants, and the Giants are playing really good football right now. Nobody's talking about that. We'll talk about that later though, but yeah, absolutely. I think they got to at least come into, some competition, because Jalen Hurts, this is his first actual start, first actual live game reps. We've seen rookie quarterbacks this year when they get in, they kind of struggle a little bit because guess what? They didn't have the preseason. They haven't had real live game action. So now this is going to be a key 4-game stretch, I think, for Philadelphia. And they're going to have to make some tough decisions this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out to PJ. We see you, brother. Thank you very much. I'm going to pull his comment.
PJ, my man, appreciate you.
Thank you very much for tuning in. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a really interesting one. And, we'll see. I mean, look, as somebody that has been covering a team that, made their change to quarterback or at quarterback, it's a really interesting time for anybody that's evaluating. And it's an exciting time for fans because it is something different, right? It does signal some type of change, some type of whatever. And when you're 3-8-1, you're looking for a change and you're hoping that it's positive. On that note, we also learned this morning, which should be absolutely no surprise to anyone at all, but for whatever reason was pumped up all throughout the week. Drew Brees, his the head quarterback, of the New Orleans Saints, his status for Week 15 against the Kansas City Chiefs is uncertain, and all I can say is, yeah.
I mean, that was the expectation, right? I think a lot of people want Drew Brees back, but here's the deal. I mean, they're running the football very well with Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray. And for some reason, look, I mean, we saw when the Saints played the Broncos, they really couldn't throw the ball, but they ran the football very, very well. And then all of a sudden, Taysom Hill loves playing the Falcons. For some reason, Taysom Hill can pass against Atlanta. And so, we just see this different, high and low every single week. And so for me, I know you cover the Saints very exclusively, Locked On Saints. But, for me, as an outsider not covering the Saints, I look at the Saints games with Taysom Hill and I'm like, what is their identity changing week to week? I think it really depends on their opponent. And, like I said, if the run game is working, why go away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No reason to at all. All right. So as we round the corner here to bring in our first guest, going to be Peter Bukowski joining us from Locked On Packers. Just want to remind everybody that if you're in any of the chats, if you watch it, you can go ahead and drop your comments all throughout the show. We'll get them up here, get you a shout out. And of course, we appreciate you being here. We'll come back and continue talking through each of these games. But now we're going to go ahead and jump to our first guest. We're going to bring in our good friend, Peter Bukowski of the Locked On Packers podcast at Peter_Bukowski on Twitter. And you can see the graphic up at the top. Peter, how are you, man? Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
I'm good, guys. How are you?
Hey, very, very good, man. Very good. Appreciate you joining in with us and for being here with us this morning. Look, Cody and I are very excited to have you back. The Green Bay Packers have been a very fun and exciting team over in the NFC. They've been a very fun and exciting team to watch all throughout the season so far. Tell us a little bit about your outlook of the Packers and what you've seen so far this season. Then we'll start to get into a little bit more nitty-gritty detail here in just a sec.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that stands out is the jump that they made offensively. And when Matt LaFleur came in first year, I expected to see a lot more play action. I expected to see a lot more of those core Shanahanian concepts come in and really take over the offense. And we didn't really see that in year one. What we saw was this hodgepodge of the Mike McCarthy, old school West Coast, and then the way that they adapted that and modified it. And then LaFleur come in and say, okay, these are the concepts that we think can work and cross-pollinate and all that cool stuff. This year, it's been Matt LaFleur's offense. And he got in the offseason Aaron Rodgers to buy into the pre-snap motion and to the heavy play action and the core concepts of the Shanahan offense. And Aaron Rodgers admitted, look, it took me some getting used to. It took me some understanding of the value of pre-snap motion and how it stresses defenses and how it benefits what we do. And that has made the whole difference in what we've seen so far this year from the Packers. The defense, pretty much the same, right? It's an inconsistent defense that relies on its pass rush and splash plays in the back end. But offensively, they're so much more consistent down to down, drive to drive, game to game. And it translates most readily on the road. Last year, they were scoring 30 points a game at home and 19 points per game on the road. This year, they're scoring 30 points per game at home and 30 points per game on the road. So that's a pretty big difference. And it's the reason you can go in and compete with the Colts in Indianapolis in a way that maybe they couldn't have a year ago. So that offensive jump, I think, is the biggest difference because, there is no team, there is no hegemon this year, the way San Francisco felt like one last year. And so because they all have flaws, I think you can make the case that the best thing anyone in the NFC has is the Packers offense. That's the single best thing in the conference. And I think that gives them a really good chance to be a real contender in the NFC.
Absolutely.
Well, when we look at the Packers offensively, you look at the Saints, their mantra could be defense. And, I think those are the two teams right now that stand out in the NFC. I mean, it's very competitive altogether. But speaking of this matchup, I mean, the Green Bay Packers, they get to play the Detroit Lions. No Jeff Okudah. He endured season-ending surgery. And this is a Packers offense that's rolling at this point. Now, for you in this game, I know divisional games can always be one of those ones where you look at and you're like, okay, it could be more competitive than most people think than the matchup initially suggests on paper. For you, what is something you'd like to see the Packers accomplish today? What is something you think that they need to work on in these 4-game stretch that might prepare them for the playoffs?
Play 4 quarters of defense. I think that would really, I think, solidify for me this idea that this team can be a real contender. I mentioned that the offense is really its identity, and that's been the case throughout the Aaron Rodgers era, of course. Matt LaFleur has been frustrated with this defense's inability to play 4 quarters. They played a quarter in some games. They played halves in some games. They played 3.5 quarters, as was the case in the Eagles game. Jalen Hurts, comes down. They get the special teams touchdown. Jalen Hurts, with a beautiful throw on 4th down for them to finally get in the end zone. And it's just sort of like, could you just do one game where you're going to play defense? And that doesn't mean shutting out the Lions, because the Lions are a good enough offense with Matthew Stafford, and then they're going to get DeAndre Swift back, and the offensive line is playing good enough football that I think they're going to be able to score. But don't give up big plays. Don't give up stupid plays. Don't play the kind of off coverage on 3rd and 4 that we've seen, Mike Pettin play a little too much this season. So it's some of those little things. What we saw last week, the Packers on the year were playing man coverage about 25% of the time. On Sunday against the Eagles, they played over 56% man cover snaps, 51% in pure cover 1, and a little more cover 0 too, just to say, we don't think you can beat us over the top.
Right.
And the pass rush did the work in 41 dropbacks for the Eagles, 28 pressures. That is getting it done up front. And it's not just Zadarius Smith, not just Preston Smith. It's Kenny Clark, it's Kingsley Keke, it's Dean Lowry, it's Rashawn Gary. They're doing it in a number of different ways. And so that, to me, they're over a touchdown favorite in Detroit. I think they're 8-point favorites, depending on where you look. You expect them to win. So now it's about style points, right? So what I want to see is the defense play that more complete game. And again, that doesn't mean, keeping them to 6 points or something like that, but just play better, consistent down to down football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea of not giving up big plays, not giving up stupid plays, you sound like me from early on in the season. I get it. I understand.
And
I
New Orleans
understand.
did it.
And they stopped it. So it's doable, right?
Right.
It's absolutely doable. And so there's no reason to write off a defense even this late in the season, because there's opportunities to continue to improve. And especially when you have an offense that fires on all cylinders the way that Green Bay's does, which helps to alleviate some of that pressure over on that defensive side as well. I want to ask you about one specific player, Rook. I got two questions for you about players. I'll start off with this one, though, because the MVP race is something that we've been paying attention to this entire season. Of course, it has shifted at times being a 2-man race to being a 3-man race. I feel like it's back to a 2-man race, but not the race that it was before. There was an earlier point in the season where it was all Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. Now it feels like it's all Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. Should Aaron Rodgers be the MVP frontrunner at this point? And if so, why?
I feel like you answered the question.
I think so.
But I'm being serious.
Yeah.
Think of the two names you started with.
Uh-huh.
And then the two names that you said the second time. There only one name was in there twice.
Yep.
And so I think that says a lot about where this race has been. Now, part of that is Rodgers comes out week 1 and takes apart the Vikings with, you and Cody starting at cornerback. No offense, guys.
No, I would be terrible.
and the Packers, they with Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers diced those guys up. And then, week 2, week 3, they go into New Orleans and they beat the Saints without Devontae Adams. Mm-hmm. And Alan Lazard is catching touchdown passes. And you're like, okay, this is a real thing. And when you look at all the underlying metrics, I wrote about this recently. If you look at all the underlying metrics, whether you like EPA per play or QBR or passer rating or yards per attempt or net adjusted yards per attempt or any of those numbers, they're razor thin margins. And you look at like Pro Football Focus grade, razor thin margins. Rodgers up in some, Mahomes is up in the other. Mm-hmm. Now go back to the offseason. What was the narrative about the Green Bay Packers in the offseason? They made a big mistake. They didn't give Rodgers more weapons. They had all of these deficiencies in terms of pass catcher. And what has happened? Well, Aaron Rodgers has produced at roughly the same level as Patrick Mahomes, who has, by all accounts, the best group of skilled players in football and the best play caller and play designer in football. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it that way, then you say, okay, well then why is how can you make the case for Mahomes over Rodgers? And if they're producing at the same level and everyone agrees that one is in a better situation than the other one, Aaron Rodgers has helped turn Robert Tonyan into a household name. And Football Outsiders, according to defense adjusted value over average, the best tight end, the most valuable tight end in the league this year is Robert Tonyan. By Big DYAR, defense adjusted yards above replacement, Tonyan is 2 tight ends in the league matter this year, Travis Kelce and Big Bob Tonyan.
Wow.
I think that matters. And Aaron Jones has not had the same sort of season. The offensive line, in terms of the running game, they have not been the same in terms of their dominance. Pass blocking, they're doing a terrific job.
Sure.
But what Rodgers has been able to do with Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Alan Lazard and Robert Tonyan, we know Devontae Adams is special, but I think the trump card is that the Chiefs have 2 guys that are special as pass catchers, Tyreek and Kelce. The Packers really only have the one. And Rodgers is making do with these other guys. Yeah. So I think for me, that's where I am right now. If they finish, if the Chiefs finish 15-1 and Mahomes throws 50 touchdowns, like it's going to be tough to not have him there. Sure. I'd be fine if it was co-MVPs. I mean, we've seen it before. Peyton Manning and Adrian Peterson did it. I think that would be fine. I just think right now, when you look at the supporting cast, no one thinks that Aaron Rodgers has as good a supporting cast or as good a coach as Patrick Mahomes does. And if they're producing at the same level, I think that speaks to their value, which is what the award is ultimately about.
Definitely.
I think you make a great point. Ross and Peter, I think when we look at Aaron Rodgers, I mean, that's always been the biggest talking point every single offseason is, are they going to surround him with weapons this time, right? Because he's been spectacular with the guys that he has. He makes guys around him better. So when we talk about value, Peter, you're spot on because his play elevates because he demands it. I mean, we go back to Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had some teams too, especially early on in Denver where, I'm sorry, Eric Decker those guys weren't those household names yet. Demaryius Thomas wasn't a household name yet. He made those guys better. And so we're seeing the same exact effect with, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have the weapons that Kansas City had. Part of me wonders, what would Aaron Rodgers look like if he had the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiving unit? That would be ridiculous. I mean, I don't think it'd be a question. I mean, he would obviously do that. But, yeah, I think that definitely factors into that. And so, obviously, 4 games left in the season. We talked about the performance of Aaron Rodgers. You want to see a complete game from them. Outside of it, entering the playoff stretch, what is one thing that you would also like to see from them defensively? I mean, I know you kind of answered it earlier, but defensively, it just seems like they have moments where they play really well, and then they have moments where they just have coverage gaps. I mean, last week, Jalen Hurts comes in the fourth quarter. It's a 4th down play. It's 4th and long, and all of a sudden, the safety, he bites down the corner on the opposite side because it's a deep over route by Greg Ward Jr. He doesn't get over that. He doesn't see it, and it's an easy touchdown. So in your opinion, do you feel like it's just a lack of talent on the back end of that secondary outside of Adrian Amos and some other guys? What's the biggest theme for them?
No, the thing that's frustrating for Packer fans, I know, is that the talent is there. They feel like if you look at every level, really, because they've started to use Darnell Savage in this sort of like lurk overhang role where he gets to be this middle of the field rover. Adrian Amos is solid on the back end, and Jair Alexander is playing as well as any cornerback in football right now. And we know what they have up front with Kenny Clark and the Smiths, and Rashawn Gary is having a really fantastic season in a sort of year 2 leap situation. It's just that down to down consistency. And what's really interesting, Cody, is last week before the Eagles game, 3 different players went to Mike Patton and said, we need to figure this out. Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, and Zadarius Smith separately, not together, separately went to Mike Patton. And the thing that they all said was, it was great because he listened to us. And it doesn't mean that he did everything we asked, but if he wasn't going to do it, he explained to us why. And that kind of open dialogue, I think, is really important. The last month, they played some dog teams and some bad offenses, but this defense is starting to hit its stride a little bit. It's starting to perform better. If you look at even the Colts game, which they lost and they give up 30 points in that game, the Packers turned the ball over 4 times, and I think the Colts scored 6 points off those turnovers. Yeah. So you can see that they're starting to put together this identity. They're starting to get healthy. I think now it's more about a mindset with them of, we're going to dictate terms. We're not going to be a reactionary defense. They've been really good this year, not giving up big plays. One of the best teams in football, not giving up big plays. The best team in football on 3rd and long. But they're not dictating terms. They don't have that sort of, the cliche attacking mindset. Every defensive coordinator gets hired and says, what? We want to have an attacking mindset. They don't dictate terms. And I think they want to do that. I think defensively, it's their mindset. There are plenty of dogs on this defense that want to play like that. And I think if Mike Patton simplifies things and just says, all right, the front, you guys go beat your one-on-one blocks, and on the back end, we're just going to trust you to play man coverage. I think that's what Matt LaFleur wants more of as well. It's that shift in mentality that I think would be essential to them locking up. I mean, to Ross's point, we've seen defenses do it. I think they can really start getting on a roll here as we get toward the playoffs. And, the Titans are going to be a big test for them. But other than that, they don't really have, down the stretch, they finished with the Bears, the Lions, the Panthers, and the Titans. The only offense in there you're worried about is Tennessee. So they're not going to have a lot of tune-ups. But that means you can get things battened down a little bit, the hatches, as you get into the playoffs. And so that's what I'd like to see from them.
That's a great point. Now, you mentioned the guy that I was going to ask you about for this next question, which was Big Bob Tunyon. So let me move forward a little bit, because you do not only are you covering the Packers every Monday through Friday over at Locked On Packers. On Mondays, you also lead off the week for Locked On NFL, picking up some of the biggest stories from around the league and bringing in some of our local experts around there. What is a storyline that everyone should be aware of heading into this Packers game? Is it just about all of those little fine tunes and battening down the hatches ahead of the playoffs, or is there something else that you're going to be looking for that people need to be aware of heading into today's matchup?
I think that Aaron Rodgers, his season has been solidified, and we know, he's in the MVP conversation. I think if you didn't already know how good Devontae Adams was, in this game, I mean, no Okudah, no Trufant, and even with Okudah, the last time these two teams played, they had no answers for Davante Adams. And Adams baptized Jeff Okudah on a number of these routes. I mean, just absolutely schooled him. And so what is the plan going to be for Detroit? They don't have one is the answer, or they don't have a good one. Right. And I'm really I'm heartened this year that Davante Adams has gotten the respect that I think he was already getting internally. I mean, Keenan Allen was asked which receiver he likes to watch the most, and it's Davante Adams. Last year, Stephon Gilmore said the hardest guy to cover off the line of scrimmage, Davante Adams. Darius Slay told me before the draft last year, the hardest cover in the league is Davante Adams. And it's because he can run every route. He can beat you deep. We saw that 50-yard bomb on an unbelievable throw and catch at the goal line, which just like that was Matt LaFleur putting his brass balls on the table. I mean, to see Davante Adams finally get that recognition as an elite player is really cool. And I think this is another game where you're going to say, okay, yeah, you just expect him to have 10 catches for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just what we expect. And he's got chances to break Packers records. Right now he's leading the league in yards per game and a lot of per game stats because he did miss 2 games.
Right.
Pro Football Focus is #1 graded receiver. Right now, to me, he's the best receiver in the game. And I think on Sunday, it's just going to be made more clear to anyone who had any questions that this guy is an absolutely elite player.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought him up. You know how I feel about Davante Adams. Yeah. I think he's the best receiver in the league, man. He's insane. He's absolutely insane.
And all due respect to Michael Thomas and Julio Jones. I mean, there are a lot of really good receivers. I just think his ability to win at the release, at the top of his route, at the catch point, he can beat you everywhere. Yeah. And that's what makes and after the catch, I mean, we saw him put Darius Slay into the ground on Aaron Rodgers' 400th career touchdown pass. He can really do it all, and it is rare to. And then, by the way, goes about his business with absolutely no drama. Has never been an issue anywhere. Has never swung at a teammate, to the best of my knowledge. But
to be fair, Michael Thomas was punched.
He's got to get in the boxing studio then. But no, I think that's a point that I like to make a lot. Is there are great receivers and great players, and there are great players who can create problems, and it is often receivers who have that sort of diva mentality, and for a lot of them, it's what makes them great. Throw me the damn ball, right?
Right.
That has never been Davante Adams' way. It's always been, I'm going to let my play do the talking, and you're going to see on tape that I'm special, and you're going to get me the ball because you're Aaron Rodgers. And that's why I think those two guys are close. It's why this works. And Rodgers, from the beginning, I mean, you guys remember a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple now, but Davante was sort of a joke. He couldn't catch and wasn't impactful. And then all of a sudden he started to break out in 2016. And Rodgers never lost the faith. He every year he'd come in and say, I'm really proud of how hard Davante Adams worked. I really like what I'm seeing. And so for this all to come together this way is really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody, you got anything else for Peter?
I'm all good, but looking forward to him. Davante Adams, if he's not in your fantasy lineup, folks, if you're not starting him, there's something seriously wrong with you. I mean, he should be an auto start every week. Even on the bye week, you should start him because he can get you 25 points.
You better believe he was my first round pick in every single fantasy draft I did. I don't care where I picked. I was like
one of the rare ones where everyone was sort of on him preseason as wide receiver 1 this year, and then he's actually been that guy.
Yeah,
I feel like it's rare that you get that in fantasy where everyone's like, oh yeah, this is the running back this year, this is the receiver this year, and then it turns out to be that's what happened. Yeah, he's been that, and that's with missing 2 games.
Yes, absolutely. Well, all best to the Packers today, man, and I hope that you enjoy the game and the weekend. Looking forward to listening to you on Monday over at Locked On Packers and over at Locked On NFL. Let's hope Davante Adams doesn't punch anybody and that he continues to do what he does. And let's also hope that Michael Thomas doesn't punch anybody. He seems to be okay right now,
or get punched.
Or get punched, whichever seems to be the flavor of the week. We appreciate you very much for coming through, man. Make sure y'all follow Peter on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. Always a pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
You guys can catch Peter's work as well, Locked On Packers, every single day, and also on Mondays on the Locked On NFL podcast and your favorite podcast provider. And he mentioned Darius Slay, and I just want to say, Ross, I don't think a player in the NFL has had a worse 2-week stretch than Darius Slay in the last 2 weeks.
And it does not get better because this week he's up against Michael Thomas, who, we mentioned, we acknowledge that Devontae Adams this year is absolutely the best wide receiver in the league, but Michael Thomas is no slouch. And then the next week, I believe he goes up against DeAndre Hopkins. And so it does not get any easier for him at all. He has a hellacious 4-game stretch here. And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So he'll be somebody to watch for certain. Although he does have a fairly good matchup this week up against a quarterback that likes to, try to beam some passes in on harsh angles. That's Darius Slay's entire bread and butter right there, jumping those routes.
Yeah, and just some interesting news, too, from a Broncos perspective. Left tackle Garrett Bowles is going to be out today. He woke up this morning feeling sick, and he's tested negative so far for COVID, so that's great. But obviously, the Broncos' offensive line is going to be crazy because now they're going to be starting also a 6th-round rookie at right guard. They want to see what Netani Muti out of Fresno State can do. And, shout
out Fresno State.
Could be an interesting game for the Broncos here today. So
yeah. From Bulldogs to Broncos. I'm a fan of the Tani Moody, though, man. He's a mauler when he's healthy.
Well, and that was the thing, too. I mean, he had a high grade from a lot of teams. Some teams had him with the 1st or 2nd round grade. Denver had him with the round 3 grade. But he had an ACL, he had an Achilles injury, and he had a Liz Frank injury as well. So for him, injuries can be a derailer. But, I think it's crazy when you think about it because now you look at it, you're starting a rookie that hasn't had preseason action. This is the first actual game action that this player has had in just about a year and a half. So, interesting day.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of rookies, man, we have one that has been lighting up the NFL. He had a little bit of a stumble last week, and people are starting to forget about him already. So we wanted to make sure we brought somebody in to remind everybody about the Justin Herbert, starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to be joined now by one of the hosts of Locked On Chargers, David Droegemeier. You can follow him on Twitter at @DDroSports. David, how are you, buddy?
Doing wonderful. How are you two gentlemen doing on this fine NFL Sunday morning?
Very good, man. Very good. Glad to have you here with us, man. We'll get to the Justin Herbert conversation here in just a moment because I want you to be able to defend your boy because he's falling back in the offensive rookie of the year conversation. He's like, I'm locked, I'm loaded, I'm ready to go.
I got
so let's start off first with the team as a whole, the Chargers. Give us your outlook of the Chargers so far through this season. We know they're a team that has been struggling, but there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of things to understand in terms of context around the Chargers. Go ahead and give us what you've got on the Chargers so far this season.
Yeah, so, I mean, going through the first probably 10 games of this season, the Chargers were competitive in pretty much every game that they played. I mean, the futility of this team as far as winning close games is probably historic in the fact that they had 4 games where they were leading by 16 points or more and lost every single one of those football games.
Yeah.
So I think right there just kind of shows you how this team is not capable of closing out close games. And the only wins that they have on their schedule so far are teams they should have beaten anyway. I mean, you beat the Bengals, which now we know without Burrow is terrible. Their offensive line literally got him hurt.
Right.
The Jaguars, another one of the worst teams in football. The Jets, the worst team in football. So yes, they like every other NFL team, they've been hurt by injuries, right? But I think honestly, the biggest issue for the Chargers has come down to game management decisions by Coach Anthony Lynn. Using timeouts at weird times, not going for it on 4th down when the statistics say that you should do that most of the time. If it's, anywhere reasonable, 4th and 5 or under, you should be going on most of those attempts because the stats back that up. But, it's just a microcosm of all those things. Also, I'd be remiss if I talked about all the failures of this Chargers team without mentioning their historically futile special teams unit. They literally are the worst special teams unit in the NFL and also one of the worst special teams unit in NFL history.
Yeah.
If you look at DVOA, they're great stats, obviously, but they have shown that the Chargers special teams unit is -15, which if that holds, will be the worst special teams unit in NFL history. So I think it's just a microcosm of all the negative things that the Chargers have experienced this year. I mean, they've been close, but lately it's kind of been separating. You've seen the lack of depth going into these last few games. And honestly, they figured out how to attack Justin Herbert and slow him down. So that's one thing I'm going to be looking forward to, is to see how he bounces back and see if he can, now that there's a book out there on him,
right? Absolutely.
If he can address that, if the coaching staff can address that, if they can come up with a plan to get him back to being productive.
Absolutely.
Well, like I said, I look at this Chargers team and the fact that they could put up so many yards of offense per game and still lose, still put up 24 plus points per game and still lose, speaks volumes to the fact that, you can have an explosive offense. You can have you look at that offense altogether. You have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams, you have Austin Eckler coming back. But even then, the running backs were contributing in a big way, even when Eckler was out. But you look at all of these scenarios and you see them sitting at the record that they have only 3 wins on the year. Part of me is sitting there and saying, look, this is a team that's better than the record indicates. But as you mentioned, special teams play, the defense hasn't always been quite consistent as always. There's times where the offense gets them a lead. Defense just for some reason can't play. Now, I wanted to ask you a question about Chris Harris Jr. because he just came back from his injury that he had. Outside of that, how has he played since coming back in?
If you look at the stats, he's not been very impressive. I think he's given up, quite a bit of yards per game and yards per target. But the problem is it's a really small sample size. They haven't really gone after him a lot, so the numbers look really inflated. For me, watching, just with my own 2 eyes, I think Chris Harris Jr. has been pretty decent. Looking, obviously we know he's best in the slot. That's where he does his best work. But,
right.
He's very versatile in the fact that, he can move on the outside, which lately the Chargers have kind of needed because Casey Hayward's been hurt. And also he's been getting beat over the top quite a bit. I think Casey Hayward's, allowed, 5 receptions of 40-plus yards this year, which is very uncharacteristic of Casey Hayward. He's, silently one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. He's just having a very off year, very abnormal. And anytime you have a corner that goes over the age of 30, we all know in the NFL, that's kind of the age where things at the skill position start to decline.
Right.
They start to go down. So it's definitely something that we're going to be monitoring for Casey Hayward. But for Chris Harris Jr., I think it's just good for him to get back healthy, for him to come back these last 4 games and play strong. So the decision on which corner to cut, which there is going to be a conversation on that, it hopefully for Chris Harris Jr., he puts enough on tape to show that he's the guy that should stick around and the Chargers should cut Casey Hayward because there is a precedent there. Both these guys have a pretty big cap number next year. Casey Hayward's is larger. If they cut him, they can save $9.75 million versus the cap. So, this is going to be a conversation for both these guys, depending on how they finish this year at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And every team's going to be trying to scramble to make sure that they're compliant with whatever that cap number ends up being next year. So sometimes it's not even going to come down to performance on the field, right?
That's the worst part of things.
To that.
Yeah, that's the worst part of things because right now in the pandemic, they've already said that, the salary cap's going to be lower because NFL teams are losing billions and millions of dollars. But to their credit, they have built in some safeguards to make it, so that there is some kind of competitiveness going into next year. But no matter what, like you said, Ross, some heads are going to roll and players are going to be included in that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to the meat and potatoes of your time here. I want to give you the time that you need because, look, at the beginning of the season, there was a lot of conversation, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, when Justin Herbert came out onto the scene. So we're about midway through the season at this point to where those guys were the front runners in terms of the offensive rookie of the year conversation. There was a third name that was kind of creeping up in there in wide receiver Justin Jefferson out of Minnesota. Now Joe Burrow is hurt. And it feels like a 2-man race between Justin Herbert and Justin Jefferson. So it's a Justin battle at the moment, a good one, not one that would take place with Justin Timberlake or something like that. We don't need all that. Justin Herbert, Justin Jefferson. And right now, it almost feels like Justin Jefferson has a bit of a full head of steam over, or at least, the momentum is on his side as opposed to Justin Herbert at the moment, because it is very much a what have you done for me lately type of a response, right? A recency bias response. So even though I'm a humongous Justin Jefferson fan, shout out to the LSU Tigers for upsetting the Florida Gators yesterday. Go Tigers. What is your argument in favor of Justin Herbert and why he is still at this moment the front runner for Offensive Rookie of the Year and will be at the end of the season.
Well, I am so glad that you asked. Well, I'm going to paint a very clear picture of why Justin Herbert should still be very squarely in the middle of the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And it's because not only has he been great this year, not only has he been great for a rookie, but he's been great historically. And I have several numbers that are going to back that up. So first of all, Justin Herbert joins Patrick Mahomes as one of the only players in NFL history to have 3,000 plus passing yards through his first 10 NFL games. So he has gotten in. Oh, by the way, they basically whispered in his ear 2 minutes before the start of the game saying, "Hey kid, it's time for you to go play. And oh yeah, by the way, you're going to play against the defending NFL Super Bowl champions and the Kansas City Chiefs," and goes out there and plays extremely well. And also he's been very consistent. Justin Herbert has tied Andrew Luck for the most games with 300 plus passing yards by a rookie in the Super Bowl era. And he's been very consistent as a rookie. He's the first rookie in NFL history to have 7 2+ passing touchdown games in NFL history. And also, he's not just good for a rookie. Like I mentioned before, Justin Herbert is one of only 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now that has 275 plus passing yards per game, 20 passing touchdowns, and fewer than 10 interceptions.
Nice.
So I know I threw a lot of numbers at you there, but I think that's the reason why, because not only has he been great, and yes, there's not a lot of quarterback, competition as far as rookies are concerned right now because of all the injuries that we talked about. But just because Justin Herbert has had a couple of down games does not mean that what he has already put on tape right now and the opportunities to what he has to be able to do in the future, he could really own every single very important rookie quarterback record in NFL history by the time these last 4 games are done. So for those reasons, that is why I still believe you cannot forget about Justin Herbert with the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year award, because the numbers back it up.
That's a convincing argument. I'm going to be honest.
No, it is. And, I coined the phrase too, and it was actually against the New Orleans Saints. Ross, you remember that game there. It was against the New Orleans Saints when he rolled out to the right with pressure. He threw a touchdown. I started coining the phrase, even back to his U of O days, Herbert fully loaded, right? That's the nickname for him now. And, pre-haircut, you're playing pretty well. Post-haircut, you can make the argument there. But he's still very valuable to their success. And you could see, too, some of the situations. I mean, when your offense is out on that field and, there are situations where the defense is giving up some points. Like I said, I don't think anybody saw the Patriots game, what happened last week. I don't think anybody saw that coming. That was just it's one of those things where you get smacked in the mouth and you're like, you're shell shocked. You don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
And then we saw the Patriots get smacked on Thursday Night Football by the Rams.
Thank you.
It is such a weird year for football. But yes, I'm a big Justin Herbert supporter. Been a big supporter of him for a long time. And look, the AFC West is even tougher. And as you mentioned, you have a division with Patrick Mahomes, and you have the argument those are the 2 best quarterbacks right now in the division. Derek Carr also playing really good football right now for the Raiders as well. And so I think that they're better than
Shout out to Greg Williams, huh?
Who's that other quarterback, Cody? What's in that division?
I don't know. I think his name is Drew. Something Drew. Right?
Yeah.
But like I said, I think comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, it's crazy that the AFC West has these tough quarterbacks the way that they, that they are. But looking at this matchup today against the Atlanta Falcons, Grady Jarrett's been a force this year on the defensive line for the Falcons. What kind of matchup problem do you think that this Falcons defense can pose? Because even Ross can attest to this while covering the Saints is they're a physical defense that flies around. Yeah. And we saw the Patriots have success against the Chargers by that same mantra. What is it that the Chargers have to do today in order to put themselves in a position to win?
Well, first of all, they need to have a plan for the blitz. I mean, that's one of the most important things I think we've seen the last couple of games against Justin Herbert is they've either stunted to, confuse him to, try to figure out where the rushers are coming from. And the offensive line is very inexperienced and they're, been very injured. So chemistry is a huge thing on offensive line and just haven't been able to build that. So first and foremost, they have to have a plan to defeat the blitz. So whether that's the quick pass, whether that's getting Justin Herbert out in space to let him roll out and create and do what he does best, use that big arm and that athleticism, that's going to be really important. But, they're going to come after him. They're going to blitz, because that's what everyone has shown that is going to give him problems. So they don't have a great pass defense. I mean, they have one of the worst groups as far as pass defense is concerned in the NFL. So there should be some opportunities for Justin Herbert to bounce back, but they need to get him into a rhythm early, especially after what happened against the Patriots. That was a huge problem. But the problem with that is that they never got into a rhythm the entire game. So they need to get his confidence going early, whether that's with quick passes or whatever, to slow down the pass rush, also get him in a rhythm at the same time. If they can do that, they can pass all day against the Atlanta Falcons. So hopefully this is a get-right game for the offense, because the last couple of games, they just have not looked good.
Absolutely. David, before we get you up out of here, once again, David Droegemeier, Locked On Chargers, Monday through Friday. Catch him and the boys covering the Chargers, getting you everything you need to know about them Chargers. Let's check out the shirt. We love it. We love it. We love to see it. David, before we get you up out of here, man, let me just ask you, you mentioned just a couple of things there about this game today. What is the most important element for the Chargers to get right in order to get right with this game today?
The most important element for this is really to, get back for Justin Herbert to get him back to being confident and going out there and playing the way we know he's capable of doing. And also for the defense to make some stops when it matters, because that's when the biggest, one of the biggest issues for this Chargers team is, they've had the lead, they've been in positions to win football games, but the defense has coughed it up. I mean, I think Cody can speak to, the first game against the Denver Broncos, where they literally threw a touchdown with no time left on the clock. I mean, that was really, really embarrassing. But, if you have a bend but don't break defense, every once in a while you got to not break. Yeah. So that's been, the biggest issue for me is, get confidence back for Justin Herbert, have him go out there, throw for 350 plus, really, get back to feeling good, get back to being that front runner in the, offensive rookie of the year category. And for the defense, get some stops when it matters so they can get their confidence going into the rest of the year, because this is what it's all about. I mean, we know they're out of the playoffs. It's all about finishing the year playing sound technical football, because if not, your general manager, your head coach, and your defensive coordinator all could be looking for new jobs at the end of the year.
You know what? I'd be remiss if we didn't ask about that, the Anthony Lynn situation in Los Angeles right now. Just real quick, what's your expectation on Anthony Lynn? Is he there next year, or does it look like he might be out?
As far as I know, I believe he's going to be out next year. I think the organization has a tremendous amount of respect for Anthony Lynn, and that is really the only reason why they have not fired him in season. Mm-hmm. I think he's very well respected around the NFL, but I doubt it. I don't think there's anything that he can do to finish out this year to keep his job. I think, there's a lot of built-in excuses, but at the end of the day, if you don't win in the NFL, then they're going to try to find someone who will. So unfortunately, as much as I like Anthony Lynn as a person, I feel like he'll be looking for a new job next year.
Sure. Cody, anything else you want to add, bud?
No, but it's a tough situation. Like I said, I mean, I like Anthony Lynn as a head coach, but it's a results-driven business. What have you done for me lately? And unfortunately, the Chargers, as you mentioned, they've had those 16-plus point leads, and then you lose those games. It doesn't buy you a lot of faith. So that right there is a big factor, because if the Chargers hold on in those games where they have that advantage, they're in the conversation right now for a wild card spot.
Yeah.
So tough situation all around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, thank you guys. I appreciate the time. Thank you for finally getting me on. I really do appreciate it.
100%, man. 100%. We're so grateful you were able to come through. Make sure y'all follow David on Twitter at DDRO, DD, it's 2 Ds, Dro Sports. And make sure you check out the boys over at Locked On Chargers. Hear more about why Justin Herbert should be that offensive rookie of the year candidate, and keep up with everything going on around those Los Angeles Chargers. We appreciate you coming through, bud.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Man, I tell you what, the AFC West is tough. The Chargers, like I said, they're better than their record indicates. It's just been about finishing games for them. And look, I see it. I see the frustration from Chargers fans, and I see the AFC West. Like I said, I think next year is going to be absolutely just brutally it's tough, because you look at the Chiefs. They're obviously a perennial favorite for the next 5 to 6 years. Look at the Chargers, up and coming. They have their franchise quarterback. They have the weapons to be great. Then you have the Raiders, who are playing really good football right now, and it's just like, man, it's tough. And Denver is playing really well defensively.
And so much young talent. Yeah, just so much young talent.
It's going to be one of the most exciting divisions. We talk about the NFC West. I mean, I think the NFC West right now probably takes the cake there in terms of that. And it's like I said, it's just nuts, man. But let's get some of our early games here this morning, Ross. A lot of fun, exciting matchups, and we're just getting closer to the end of the season. I hate it.
I know, right? It's like there's the excitement of getting closer and closer to the postseason, but then there's the bitterness of the season, knowing that it's almost over. And unlike NBA fans, right? We don't get the abbreviated 71-day offseason. We're going to get the full offseason time around.
I know that sucks, but you know what? It gives us a lot to look forward to from the NFL free agency and also the NFL draft. You know, like I said, folks, football never stops here at the Locked On Podcast Network, the Locked On NFL channel. Every team, we have shows for you all year long, 5 days a week, and so make sure that you stay locked in and you know, obviously glued into what we got going on here at the Locked On NFL Network. But yes, Tito, good morning. Coffee time is always great. Tito, I tell you what, Tito's been an MVP, man, here watching Locked On NFL Sundays. Appreciate Tito's support.
Appreciate you coming through. I want to give a shout out real quick to my boy Leo as well, who came through. Sorry I wasn't on the show last night or Who Dat Confessional live stream, but I will be there tonight. So we appreciate you coming through. And look at this little opportunity that we have here, Cody. Do you want to become famous? I love these little moments, man.
I know. The bots are great. Thank you, Twitch, for the bot filter there. But
good work, guys. So let's get to a few of these games here before we get to some of our picks. We'll skip over a couple that we are going to be picking, but the Houston Texans heading to take on the Chicago Bears. Both of these teams not doing so great at the moment. The Texans with a heartbreaking loss last week. Right now, though, Houston is allowing 406.3 yards per game and a 106.6 passer rating. So is this an opportunity for Mitch? My question is this a good opportunity for Mitch Trubisky because he's going up against a not so great defense, or is this an opportunity for a not so great defense going up against Mitch Trubisky?
I think it's the latter there. I mean, this is just one of those things too. And I believe the Texans just ruled out one of their wide receivers. I believe
Brandon Cooks
been ruled out. So,
and this is after cutting Kenny Stills and after losing Will Fuller for the rest of the season to a PED suspension.
Are they trying to sabotage Deshaun Watson here? I mean, that's the vibe I get. But let's talk about a team that, I mean, has there been as big of a drop off from an NFL team besides the Chicago Bears? They started off red hot and all of a sudden, they're just now at a point. So I think quarterback's their biggest issue. I think they're going to have an entirely different quarterback room in 2020. And like I said, you just look at this game, and this is kind of like, I don't want to say a toilet bowl, but the Texans offense, we know David Johnson in this game either for them. So
right, that's true. Yeah.
Chicago defensively should match you up really well, but Chicago has embraced kind of that bend but don't break. I mean, I talked to a lot of Bears fans as well, and they're not happy with Chuck Pagano's defense this year. It's been a sight for sore eyes, and Khalil Mack hasn't really been talked about as much either, which has been very surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. The next game that we're going to take a look at, this one may be in the running for Toilet Bowl. We've got the Dallas Cowboys favored -3 going up against the Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like that's an important qualification when we talk about these two teams. The Bengals right now allowing 125 rushing yards per game over the course of a season since 2017. This feels like a feed Zeke game to me, although Dallas has proven to be a little bit more hesitant about that type of a game plan.
Yeah, I think the writing's on the wall. The Cincinnati Bengals are just so depleted, so young, and just so bad right now on the offensive side, the offensive line. Doesn't matter who you put a quarterback right now until you solve some of those issues on the O-line. I think Dallas has the easy advantage in this game. I think for Andy Dalton too, returning back to Cincinnati, he's got a little bit of a vibe to him right now. I think he's gonna play a really good performance. And you look at CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper and. Guy, even go back to the game that we saw on Tuesday. It's just they had so many different missed opportunities against Baltimore, and you have to make the argument. I think Baltimore got away with a few pass interference calls, a few holding calls, especially right before halftime. Yeah. And so that could have made a big difference in the game. But ultimately, I think it's going to boil down to Cincinnati can't run the football very well because of the offensive line issues. Dallas, I think they're the easy favorite here.
Yeah, absolutely. Next we'll jump to the Tennessee Titans -3 going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tennessee coming off of a shocking game. The Cleveland Browns making a big-time statement. I expected that was number 1 rushing offense versus number 2 rushing offense. I thought that was going to be all ground game, and all of a sudden Baker Mayfield goes out and throws like 4 touchdowns. It was just absolutely insane during that first half. Now we look at Derrick Henry, who's averaging 111.8 rushing yards per game against AFC South opponents, which is the best mark in terms of one player up against their division. So I feel like this is a good bounce back opportunity for the Tennessee Titans coming off of that big loss against the Browns last week.
Yeah, it is. And Jacksonville, they're struggling right now with figuring out, okay, what quarterback play can we get? I mean, we got the Oregon State guy one week. We got Glennon the next week. Gardner Minshew, obviously, injured and on the sideline. But looking at this game, I think Tennessee, they've just been one of those teams. you factor in they could be the best in their division. I think Indianapolis has that right now, but they look great one week. Tannehill looks great one week. The rushing attack is going, but then we see Derrick Henry last week turn the ball over, something we haven't really seen him do.
Right.
And we see, I mean, Jeff Lloyd of Locked On Browns and Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans, they talked about it. They thought it was going to be a game where it was going to be who gets the advantage rushing the football and who gets because you mentioned the number one rushing offense against the number two rushing offense. We just saw Baker Mayfield just play ridiculous. I mean, he went nuclear in that game. I don't think you're going to see the same type of performance from a Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. They don't have necessarily the weapons to do that. So I think that Tennessee, they're going to play ball control defense. They're going to run the football in this game, and I think that Tannehill is going to be efficient on the situations where they have him pass. So I think the advantage is in Tennessee's favor too.
Yeah, absolutely. Denver, Carolina, and Minnesota, Tampa Bay, we're going to be talking about here in just a moment when we make our picks. But Kansas City favored -7, traveling to Miami to take on the surging Dolphins. Is it bad to say that I kind of feel like this is a little bit of upset watch?
I don't know. It really depends because Brian Flores, they have embraced the mentality of sending pressure at the quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is great against all-out blitzes because then it means man coverage. Denver, what they did last week against Kansas City, they did bend but not break, and they didn't break. They kept everything in front of them. Then they tightened up in the red zone. Kansas City, this is tough because Kansas City's returning to the spot where they won the Super Bowl last year. Right. So, you know what?
It's a familiar that feeling does not go away. Like when you enter that stadium, you know you did that.
No, yeah, it doesn't go away at all. And I think we're going to see a heavy dosage of Travis Kelce today, which I had a lot of Chiefs fans in my mentions. I just said, Travis Kelce, the best player at his position, but his post-game interview last week calling the Broncos the Raiders, I was like, yeah, he's kind of a tool. You should have seen my mentions this week.
Oh, no, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Here's an interesting thing that I found. Patrick Mahomes, though, 7-0 against top 5 scoring defenses in his career. So he performs when he goes up against these top defenses. And of course, Miami allowing less than 21 points in 9 of the last 12 games, which is the best mark in the NFL so far this season. So I think this is going to be a really fun matchup to catch. I'm looking forward to this one. Kansas City, of course, also has New Orleans up on the horizon. So there is a little bit of a conversation of a potential look ahead in this game as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the Sunday afternoon games here. We've got Indianapolis heading to take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas, a little bit of a bounce back a big time bounce back because Darren Waller just went absolutely wild last week. And I don't know if Indianapolis Indianapolis' defense is very good, but obviously they've got to be keying in on Darren Waller, who had a phenomenal game last week.
I think this is the game of the afternoon to really watch. I think a lot of people are going to be tuning in to see Jalen Hurts make his full-time starting debut. But this is a very good game because these teams right now are they're competing for playoff spots, playoff positioning. Yeah. So for the Raiders, they don't have the luxury to lose. Now, we saw the New York Jets almost upset them last week. And then obviously the whole Greg Williams debacle. I mean, who goes engage 8 with 34 seconds left in the game?
Listen, don't get me started on Gregiga. All right.
Oh man,
go all day on Gregiga.
But this is gonna be an interesting matchup for sure because there's a lot on the line, and Las Vegas is not in a position to lose any football games at this point because the AFC is so tightly contested for some of those final wild card spots. Yeah, this game to watch, obviously, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very fun one for sure. So we've got the Green Bay Packers heading to – we've got the New York Jets heading to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle favored -15 in this one. But Seattle has had some struggles here recently. I'm not saying that they're going to drop a game to the Jets, but maybe that -15 is worth giving a run here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Seahawks defense this year has been historically poor. I mean, I've never seen a Seahawks defense play the way they played this year. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I think that New York is going to get the best of Seattle twice, right? The New York Giants last week, New York Jets this week. Sam Darnold, he's not happy. And guess what? Greg Williams ain't there anymore. So,
That's right.
Perfect opportunity.
Wow. Yeah, that would be a massive upset. Imagine the New York Jets getting their first win of the season against the Seattle Seahawks. That would be absolutely
We saw the
insane.
Pittsburgh Steelers lose their first game of the season. This is where the Jets are going to get their first win of the season. So, yes.
Wow.
You heard it here first.
Let's get it. Next up, we've got the Green Bay Packers traveling to take on the Detroit Lions. Now, Peter gave us a great nugget earlier about averaging 30 points at home and 30 points on the road. But here's a big thing. The Packers also averaging 37 points per game against the NFC North. So against these division rivals, the Lions, the Bears, and the Vikings, they have been absolutely on fire on the offensive side.
Yeah, this is ESPN's 30 for 30 on the 2020 Green Bay Packers. The amount of offensive explosion that they've been able to have. I just look at Detroit, so depleted defensively.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they have enough firepower to really keep up with the Green Bay Packers offense. This is going to be a game where, like I said, I think we're going to see probably Green Bay play their most complete game of the season. And when you mention against division opponents, guess what? That's the mark you love to see, is that how do you play? Do you like to play close and competitive against division opponents, or do you just want to dominate them? That's what Green Bay's done here. So I don't expect anything less here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a very fun game. Either way, either because Devontae Adams just goes off and it's a lot of fun to watch, or because this game is surprisingly competitive, which I tend to lean toward the latter a little bit. One game that we didn't hit from the early morning segment, because we've talked a bit here about Atlanta and the Chargers already, about New Orleans and Philadelphia, and then we're going to pick Washington and San Francisco. I do want to hit one more game. It's the Arizona Cardinals traveling to take on the New York Giants. The Giants coming off their big win last week. Can they do it twice in a row against another NFC West opponent?
I absolutely think they can. And here's the deal. I mean, the Giants are one of the better teams right now defensively. Could you imagine if they had Saquon Barkley? Could you imagine if they had weapons at the wide receiver position? New York, I'm very impressed with how they've been playing. Like I said, I mean, they've never really been blown out of any games. They've always been in. They've been close. So I think that's something to build on. And, hats off to Joe Judge, because he was getting a lot of criticism for being the hire for the Giants this year.
Right.
He has done a phenomenal job, and obviously I think it buys Dave Gettleman another year in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. That has been a really fun team to watch. And if you want to hear more from Saquon Barkley, by the way, our very own Patricia Traynor over at Locked On Giants got an interview with him, full-length, full-show interview with Saquon Barkley, talking about the initiatives that he's had so far, as well as just sort of the mental fortitude that he's built up rehabbing from his injury. Talked a bit about the resurging Giants. So go ahead and check that out over on Locked On Giants. Patricia did a great job with that interview, and Saquon is just an incredibly engaging dude. Like it's not press conference Saquon, it's interview Saquon, and it's really, really good stuff. All right, so let's get to our picks for Sunday here. We got a couple of the games we didn't talk about that we'll get to within this bunch here. We got 5 games. Minnesota Vikings at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay favored -6.5 at home on this one. I feel like the Vikings have a better shot than what they're being given right now per betonline.ag, which is where we got this spread. I really feel like this is going to be a good opportunity we talked about Justin Herbert solidifying himself in terms of the Offensive Rookie of the Year candidacy. Could be the same conversation for Justin Jefferson, looking to do the same thing. One thing I want to throw out, the Bucs haven't given up a 100-yard rusher in 20 games so far, 20 games in a row. So a pretty nice streak there. Dalvin Cook, obviously somebody that could look to break that. What's your pick here for Vikings at Bucs?
I'm going to go upset special. I think the Vikings
buddy.
go on the road, and I think they beat Tampa Bay. And one of the reasons I'm so confident in that right now is that Tampa Bay defensively, in that secondary, they have just struggled with giving up big plays. We saw Tyreek Hill go off for 200-plus yards in one half against them in that first half. Justin Jefferson is going to be a big difference maker here, and I think that they gamble so much defensively by trying to send pressure. We're going to see some of that play action from Kirk Cousins. I think you're going to see Justin Jefferson have a big game today.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Justin Jefferson. As I mentioned, big fan of his with the LSU Tigers. Speaking of
Tigers,
Dylan coming through. Marcus Wilson did indeed throw a shoe. That did indeed happen.
He did. And Dylan, that shoe that got thrown was a player that I actually coached in high school.
That's right.
So Cole Taylor, number 87, big 6'7" target. Love to see him. True freshman getting some action as the LSU Tigers upset the Florida Gators.
Love that game. Let's jump over now to another team that you know very well. We've got the Denver Broncos traveling to take on the Carolina Panthers. Right now, the Panthers have lost 6 straight. Christian McCaffrey is not active in this game. And when you hear that, generally you think it's a bad thing, but the Panthers, interestingly enough, 0-3 with Christian McCaffrey as their starter. It's been really interesting, sort of the way that trajectory has gone for them. But they're another team that's on a bit of a nosedive. Can the Broncos keep that nosedive going for Carolina and get themselves a win here?
I don't know. All week long on Locked On Broncos, I was talking about it. This is the game where I think the Broncos play their best offensive game, but today so much has changed. They put Netani Muti at right guard, a 6th-round pick out of Fresno State. They're going to be without Garrett Bowles today, who is ill. So now you're going to have Calvin Anderson start at left tackle, and you're going to have Elijah Wilkinson, who's really struggled at right tackle this year. He's going to start there instead of DeMar Dotson, who's actually been reliable in pass pro this year. For Drew Lock, I'm looking at this game like, man, the microscope is on Drew to perform well, but I don't know with this offensive line right now. And Denver's had, their inconsistencies on offense. Defensively, I think they match up. Obviously, no DJ Moore for the Carolina Panthers today. Curtis Samuel will play, though, and Robbie Anderson's there as well. Mike Davis, you can't forget about him. He is a bruiser, folks. So even without Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis gives them a legitimate threat. If the Broncos can't stop the run, it could be a very ugly afternoon game for Denver. But I don't know. I mean, early on this week, I picked Denver. I thought Denver's going to have, their best chance to do it. I can't change my pick, so I'm going to stick with Denver on this one. Yeah. But the offense, like I said, I mean, right now I think it'd be a toss-up.
Yeah. I don't really know where to go with this. So this is I feel like this line should be closer. I feel like it's a little bit more of a pick 'em between these two. That of course comes with some information that we got this morning though. But I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with Denver. I'm going to say that they do get this win. I just feel like right now, the Panthers on that nosedive. Teddy Bridgewater, unfortunately, at the driving force of that. Not that he's been the reason, but he's the quarterback in that situation. Yeah. And it's just not a great look so far for Carolina. And again, I still very much believe in this Denver team as a young and talented one that's ready to put a lot together. And speaking of putting a lot together, we got the Washington football team heading to take on the San Francisco 49ers in Arizona. Remember the 49ers, as we talked to Brian Peacock last week, host of Locked On 49ers, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. The San Francisco 49ers not playing at home with the recent I'll say like the stay-at-home lockdown situation. Yeah. Santa Clara not allowing them to play, so they moved to Arizona. And teams since I think I want to say since 1970, since the merger, but teams that are playing home games away from home are 1-5 historically. And so this has not been so far a winning formula for teams. And Washington's coming off of a big time win last week with that was the Tuesday, or is that was the Monday. Second Monday night game, second Monday night game. Just outstanding performance by them and what they've been able to put together so far. Can they keep it rolling against the 49ers?
I think they can. And San Francisco, like I said, they've just been so up and down. And, and really for them, it's just been quarterback. Jimmy G, when he played this year, wasn't the sharpest, but it's an evident drop off with Nick Mullins at quarterback position. And so for Washington, Alex Smith, I mean, hey, the fact that he was able to even come back and play, I thought comeback player of the year, but the way that he's played as well, he's put them in a position to win games. He's the evident shoe-in. And look, they should rename the award to the Alex Smith Comeback Player of the Year award. Yeah. Very happy with them. And defensively, they're playing tough and nasty. And Chase Young, he's getting after the quarterback. And yeah, I think that Washington's going to come, on the road here, especially for the San Francisco 49ers who are playing on the road.
Yeah. These two teams, this game is like my game. I feel like this was built for me. This is the number 4 defense going up against the number 6 defense. We love defense, Cody, and there should be a lot of it in this game, especially with Washington's very talented front 4. I think they can take this one away. I think they can take this one home. Yeah. Let's jump into our primetime games. This is a huge matchup. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to take on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills favored in this one, -2.5, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who up until last week were undefeated. They dropped that game to Washington, as we just talked about. I'm really excited about this matchup. Josh Allen has been outstanding so far this season. Right now, he's got 26 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 105.9 passer rating so far on the season, and he's been great as of late. I'm gonna take Buffalo in this game. It's weird because you haven't been picking against Pittsburgh all season. Now all of a sudden you're picking them to go 2 in a row, to drop 2 in a row, but Buffalo has just been absolutely on fire here as of late.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh, they've just gotten into a rhythm where they just want to throw the football so much. And I think that's really been a down for them. They have receiving talent, don't get me wrong, but you got to find a way to run the football. I know James Conner, he was out last week with COVID, but you got to find a way to run the football effectively, because you don't want Ben Roethlisberger, who last year, coming off of an elbow injury to his throwing arm, you don't want to have him coming in and throwing 48 times a game. That's just not a winning formula. And, when you throw the ball that much and you don't complete, certain passes, and it stops the clock, and then your defense is back on the field, you may have a shorter drive than you usually are. defense on the field a little bit too long. Look, Buffalo right now is playing, ridiculously tough football. And I think that Josh Allen, the way that they're playing, Buffalo, in my opinion, is a serious contender for the Super Bowl this year. And so I think that Buffalo is going to win this one, and Pittsburgh's going to drop their second game in a row, and Kansas City is going to elevate to that number 1 seed.
Yeah, absolutely. Ooh, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Ooh, Baltimore at Cleveland. This is anytime we talk about these NFC North matchups, I feel like it's just explosive, physical, gritty, and that's what we've seen so far this year. Baltimore coming off of a big rushing performance against the Cowboys. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, they were able to run the football. Now, I wouldn't say necessarily pass the football as effectively, which is still a concern for them, but Cleveland coming off of an absolutely explosive, surprising performance. Ross, who do you have in this matchup?
Man, I'm going to ride the wave. I'm going to go with Cleveland. They just locked up their first winning season in a very, very long time. Baker Mayfield right now, perfect passer rating on passes, at least 10 plus air yards down the field. He's been outstanding over these last few games, and Baltimore's dropped 4 of their last 6. I'm going to take Cleveland in this one.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see, because look, this has serious wild card implications in the AFC as well. So Cleveland, they're red hot. Can't go with the hot hand. I mean, that right there, what they've been able to do. They've got Chubb healthy. They've got Kareem Hunt. Obviously, they're one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. And then when they can create it to where they can explode offensively the way that they did it last week, look, Baker Mayfield was in his bag. I think we're going to see a lot more of that today, especially if Baltimore can't pass the football. Going against Myles Garrett, that's going to be a big thing. So yes, Cleveland.
Yeah, really good point there. Really, really good point. Oh, what a fun show we had today. We will be back next weekend on Sunday. Big thank you to betonline.ag for all of our spreads there and all of our lines. We'll be back on Sunday. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. Is it useful? Should we still have it? And what are good alternatives instead? And of course, we'll break down every game of the week, just like we did here today. We appreciate y'all, as always, for being here with us on Locked On NFL Sunday. We've got myself, Ross Jackson, and of course, Cody Roar. Cody, we appreciate you. I always appreciate being able to do this with you, man, and welcome back through.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, whatever your favorite football team is, there is a Locked On show for you. So if you're a Locked On Dolphins fan, if you're Miami Dolphins and New York Jets fan, we have a show for you every single day, Monday through Friday, daily, the local experts on the biggest stories. And you can catch us back